Good evening, folks. I hope you're doing well tonight. I'd like to tell you a quick story, and I promise it's relevant. See, a number of years ago in this country, a leader, a president, decided that all the pupils of the schools will be given milk, free milk, to the schools. And this was an announcement. It was made on the radio stations and the TV stations, and it was everywhere. So one day, the next day, a student went to the teacher. It was lunchtime, the time that the milk was supposed to be distributed, and said, "Excuse me, sir, we would like some milk." And the teacher said, "No, there isn't any milk." But the boy said, "Sir, we know there's milk. We would like it, and we would like it now." Now, here's the thing. This little story, it highlights a very, very critical situation that we find ourselves in as a country. It's a matter of awareness and knowledge of civics, right? Awareness is, if I may, is a mere consciousness. I know it exists, you know? The student knew about it in the news that there was milk, but knowledge is about facts. It's about facts. He knew, yes, there is milk, for a fact. The milk belongs to me as a student. It's free milk. And it's indeed in that carton. We saw it come in on the truck, and it is my milk, and it is now that I need to take this milk. Facts and awareness. So I have a question for you folks. Do you know what are the rights and duties of you as a citizen and your leaders? Do we know? We are aware there's rules and duties of a leader or as a citizen, but do we know the facts? Do we know the role of our MCAs, for example, of our members of parliament, of our attorney general, of our president even? Do we know for sure, for factual certainty? Do we know? The question is mine. The answer is yours. This shall be the question and the conversation that we're going to have later on tonight. We're talking about civic awareness, civic education, and what it means for you and I today and in the next general election, just 2.5 years away. All that and so much more later on. But first, I want to show you something. TV47, your home of untold stories, has a partnership with The Star, and we are able to give you a sneak peek into tomorrow's newspaper headlines. This is what The Star is going to look like tomorrow morning when you buy it from your favorite vendor. We put you ahead of the game. We put you in the know. And of course, the big news, Raila Odinga stepping up the AU chairmanship bid with 19 countries in Africa in support. Now, a candidate is supposed to have at least 34 countries, support of 34 countries to win the post. He has 19, and these three names are his rivals: Mahmoud Ali Yusuf from Djibouti, Richard Randriamandrato from Madagascar, and Anil Gayan from Mauritius. And another bit of news, top left corner, wanted man. Do you know this man? Collins Jumaisi. If you do, it might just be worth your while. The DCI will reward you quite handsomely if you help them find this man. He escaped from Gigiri police station alongside 13 others 2 days ago. All this and so much more inside The Star. And you only get this advanced knowledge from nowhere else but TV47. And welcome to the Daily Report. My name is Victor Muyakane. On sign language is none other than Catherine Simaloy. And with that out of the way, here are the highlights. Chief Justice Martha Koome raises concerns about the new university funding model, which categorizes students into 5 groups based on their family's financial status.
All those bursaries, how are they disbursed? Why wouldn't you put them in education and make education free for all?
And 5 police officers from Gigiri police station facing serious allegations of assisting a notorious serial killer and a group of detainees in their escape have been released on personal bonds of 200,000 shillings each.
The respondents be and hereby admitted to bail on the following terms. Each respondent shall execute a personal bond of 200,000 shillings each.
Usinikujie saa 8 ya usiku jamani. Na nini tu ni civic education ama aje? Bana.
And tonight in our special news feature, we focus on how the rising wave of civic awareness could potentially influence voting patterns in the 2022 general elections.
And they're usually targeted in small places. But here we have mass mobilization by the youth themselves involved, which is a new phenomenon in itself.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is so much what we have tonight. I would like to invite you to communicate with us and relate to us what you feel about the news that we're about to air, your views and reviews on the news, if I may say so. And how you do that is through the numbers on your screen, SMS line and WhatsApp number, which I'll be able to sample your feedback from. Shall we begin? Let's do that. Now, a section of leaders have come out to castigate the new university funding model. NARC Kenya party leader Martha Karua has rejected it, citing discrimination. Chief Justice Martha Koome, on the other hand, wants a unified and consolidated fund from where Kenyan students can access funding for tertiary education. George Maringa opens the bulletin for us with this report.
As thousands of students prepare for the third semester and freshmen count days to begin their higher education, leaders continue to poke holes into the new university funding model. For starters, NARC Kenya party leader Martha Karua has rejected the new funding model, saying it discriminates learners.
Just as Kenyans rejected the heavy hand of the state in imposing unjustifiable taxes that threaten to crush the livelihoods of millions, we must now reject this new oppressive university funding model placed on the shoulders of our students and their families. It represents an attempt to extract wealth from the most vulnerable and to consequently deepen the economic divide in our society. In a similar fashion, the ongoing CBC system, competency-based curriculum, which restructures secondary education and segregates junior secondary and the rest of secondary. You know, secondary years are 4. So the first 2 are put aside, away from the other 2.
The head of the judiciary, Chief Justice Martha Koome, on the other hand, avers that there is need to consolidate the numerous bursaries into one.
How unequal and how unjust we are in a society. That the child who has qualified to go to the university can be there crying, saying, look, I've been put in band 5. Is it band 5? When I ought to be in band 1, and therefore I cannot afford to go to the university. And when you follow, you find the person, the child of a well-to-do family has been put in band 1. When you follow, you also find that there is bursary fund given from the taxpayers' money, given to the governor, given to the women rep, given to the MP through CDF, given to the MCA. I hope none of them is here because they are going to lynch me. Now, all those bursaries, how are they disbursed? Why wouldn't you put them in education and make education free for all?
Government spokesperson Isaac Mwaura, in his Thursday address to the nation, talked of a flawed appeal process which he says is being corrected.
Kumekuwa pengine na changamoto kidogo kwa sababu nakumbuka kwamba watu walikuwa na wanafunzi walikuwa wajue matokeo ya kile kitengo ambacho mtu amewekwa kufikia tarehe 19. Lakini sasa hivi kuna huo mwanya wa kuweza kukata rufaa, na hilo ni jambo ambalo litaendelea. Kile ambacho nitakuhakikishia ni kwamba hakuna mtu yeyote atawachwa nje akose kuingia katika chuo kikuu ama taasisi kwa kisingizio kwamba bado hajaweza kupatiwa mkopo ama kupatiwa fedha au fadhili nasi.
With a few weeks left before learning resumes, eyes will be on the government and the Ministry of Education to see how they navigate the implementation of the new university funding model. George Maringa, TV47, Nairobi.
Tonight, the government has defended President William Ruto's relaunch of stalled projects, terming it as a noble cause. The government spokesperson, Isaac Mwaura, said that Kenyans should instead laud the president for keeping the promise of relaunching the same projects he launched when he was deputy president. Mwaura's remarks likely to cause anger among Kenyans who are questioning the loss of public funds in stalled projects. Apollo Kamau tells us more.
In what is likely to stir public anger after an expose of stalled government projects relaunched by President William Ruto by 28-year-old lawyer Morara Kebaso, who took social media by storm after conducting inspection tours of the stalled projects, government spokesman Isaac Mwaura says the relaunched projects, some which never took off after they were first launched by the president when he served as deputy president, is a noble cause that he should be thanked for after keeping his promise.
There could be headwinds in anything that we do in life. So I think it is very noble, that be the case. And of course, if then that was something that, for example, the president did when he was a deputy president, he's just, keeping the promise because he's now the commander-in-chief and the head of government.
A statement that has not gone down well with Morara, who spoke during Okoa Uchumi Forum here in Nairobi, where he vowed to soldier on with his accountability push on Ruto projects. Morara also revealing that his life is now in danger for his accountability quest.
I've had threats to the life of my family. I've had salutes from DCI hung around my home with unmarked vehicles. I've had people try to track my phones, to hack my phones. I've had people searching my IP address when I'm browsing. I've had to change cars. I've had to get out of my house in somebody's boot, the boot of a vehicle. I've had to sacrifice my personal comfort and my personal luxury in the pursuit of a dream of a better Kenya.
Mwaura singles out budgetary constraints and a huge public debt as a reason for stalled projects, despite protests that the White Elephant projects have already cost the taxpayer millions after some of the contracts were terminated.
Your Excellency, sir.
Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has since directed national government administration officers to supervise government projects in their area of supervision.
And it is your work to make sure that the projects the president has launched are going on. And if they don't, you have a duty to file a report to that effect on behalf of the president.
Apollo Kamau, TV47.
Now, if you're a parent or a guardian of a school-going child, you better pay attention. The Ministry of Education has issued a directive requiring all parents to ensure that their school-going children are registered under the Social Health Insurance Fund, or SHIF. This is before the third term begins on August 26th of this year. In a memo addressed to all regional and county directors of education, the ministry emphasized that parents must register their children as dependents under the SHIF program. Anno Dida with the details.
As the start of the new school term approaches, parents across the country are being urged to take swift action in response to the new health fund. By Monday, August 26, all school-going children must be registered under the recently introduced Social Health Insurance Fund, SHIF. The directive issued by Principal Secretary for Basic Education, Belio Kipsang, in a letter dated August 16, requires that children be registered as dependents of their parents before the new school term begins, an initiative that has been further supported by Principal Health Secretary Mary Mudhoni.
The message has been passed in the Ministry of Education, all school-going children to register before they go back to school so that it will be easy for them to be catered for all.
The new policy marks a significant expansion of the previous Edu Afya scheme, which was limited to secondary school students, by now extending coverage to primary school learners as well. The Social Health Insurance Act number 16 of 2023, which took effect on November 22, 2023, mandates that all Kenyans, including children, register with SHIF. This act is a critical component of the government's efforts to achieve universal health coverage by ensuring that every citizen has access to essential health healthcare services. Since July 1st, 2024, registration for SHIV has been in progress. The Ministry of Health, through the Social Health Authority SHA, has developed an expanded benefit package to integrate EduAfya into SHIV. This means that the comprehensive health coverage previously available to secondary school students will now be accessible to all school-going children. Ann Odida, TV47.
And still on matters education, parents and teachers are in a state of confusion following the teachers' industrial strike that is to take place on August 26th of this year. This will greatly affect the school's curriculum, especially for grade 6 candidates. This, as Principal Secretary for Education, Belio Kipsang, asks teachers to find better ways to solve conflict. Anastasia Mukabi reports.
Of confusion following the proposed teachers' strike that is to take place on Monday. They fear that the grade 6 learners will be affected greatly since they need their teachers' supervision to pass their exams.
Na kwa hivyo walianza masomo kwa kuchelewa. Kwa hivyo serikali ingefanya bidii hiyo mgomo wasisitize, at least watoto wafanye mtihani kwanza ndio ama watayarishwe, kwa sababu hawa watoto kwa ukweli wa kidato cha 6 ni watoto umri wao ni kidogo na wanahitaji walimu sana kwa kujitayarisha.
According to Tom Nyombeka, a teacher, he believes that the teachers' strike will greatly affect the curriculum and the candidates this year.
Ni swala ambalo wanaweza kaliweka mezani wakajadiliana na wakapata suluhu ili wasije wakawaathiri wanafunzi kutokamilisha silabasi, vile kuweza kuathiri matokeo yao mwishowe, na vile kuweza kuchangia nyongeza ya athari za kisaikolojia kwa wanafunzi wetu.
Following the Teachers Service Commission meeting held yesterday with the teachers unions KUPPET and NAT, the agreement went in disarray and the teachers demanded the following. Promotion of all the 130 stagnant teachers, have a budget for teachers' medical scheme as per current limits for each job group, employ the 46,000 intern teachers on permanent and pensionable terms, employ the 20,000 new teachers for GSS, remittance of all that party deductions like bank loans and SACCOs. They've also asked for the TSC to call the teachers' unions for a new CBA 2025 and 2029. Meanwhile, Principal Secretary of Education Belio Kipsang has asked teachers to find better ways to resolve conflict as educators.
We should have been able to get different perspectives in which we can be able to change the future, because we are custodians of the future.
Sim Kabi, TV47.
Now, a court sitting in Milimani in Nairobi has released 5 officers from Gigiri police station on a personal bond of 200,000 shillings each. Of course, these officers were arrested for allegedly aiding in the escape of 13 suspects, including the prime suspect of the Quarry murders, that is Collins Jumaisi. Now, as Moige William reports, in the wake of this incident which happened on Monday, top officials in the National Police Service have warned that officers will be held personally liable for their actions.
Milimani Principal Magistrate Martha Nanzushi has freed 5 police officers earlier stationed at the Gigiri police station on a 200,000 shillings personal bond. The 5 were arrested for allegedly aiding in the escape of 13 suspects, including Collins Jumaisi, the prime suspect in the Quarry murders.
The 2nd, 4th and 5th.
Magistrate Nanzushi in her ruling declining an application to hold the 5 for 14 days, stating that the prosecution failed to provide compelling reasons to justify detaining the officers. The Directorate of Criminal Investigations, DCI, had sought additional days to hold the officers so as to complete the investigations into the escape of 13 suspects.
By them not objecting to being detained, the court reads a sign of good faith and their willingness to cooperate with the investigating officers in this investigation. The reasons advanced for detaining them are not compelling to this court to allow their application.
Following the shocking escape of 13 suspects from police custody, an incident so unlikely it has been likened to scenes from the Hollywood series Prison Break, the DCI on Thursday appealed to the public for assistance in recapturing Jumaisi. DCI has offered a generous cash reward for anyone providing credible information that leads to his arrest. The events of the 20th of August leaving the National Police Service with an egg on their face, the service now resorting to walk away from a shaky confidence by the public by deploying its top lieutenants to make impromptu visit to police stations. Wednesday night, the Deputy Inspector General of the service, Edlu Lagat, visited Kilimani Police Station, warning that officers will be held liable for each of their actions while discharging their duties. Lagat, accompanied by other top officials in the National Police Service, inspected the cells, bathrooms, armory, among other facilities. Mwege William, TV47.
A family is calling upon the government and President William Ruto to intervene and help them solve the riddle of the disappearance of their kin, Peter Macharia, who disappeared during the 2024 anti-finance bill dubbed Occupy Parliament in June 25th. And as Samira Mohammed reports, the family says that it suspects there is a cover-up of something far more serious.
The anguish of a grieving mother. The heart-wrenching cry of a woman shattered by a missing son never to be traced. Stopping tears of a mother who's left marooned, shattered in the aftermath of the Gen Z protests, where chaos erupted, leaving countless lives tragically cut short. According to witnesses, Peter Macharia, a 27-year-old man who disappeared on June 25th during the 2024 anti-finance bill protest dubbed Occupy Parliament, sustained a gunshot wound and was rushed to the Kenyatta National Hospital.
Ilikuwa hospitali ya Kenyatta. Na ndio hapo waliniangalia wakaniambia vile huyo mtoto alikuja wakampiga picha, wakafanya kila kitu na hakuwa ameumia sana, alikuwa na minor injuries.
According to Alice Wamboi, Peter's mother, she found out at the Kenyatta National Hospital that her son was rushed there by a Kenya Red Cross ambulance after sustaining a gunshot wound at the protest, but was later discharged on the same night of June 25th.
Walisema ilikuwa ni gunshot. Walisema ilikuwa ni gunshot.
Alice now cries for justice as she fought the Kenyatta National Hospital doctors for negligence, for having discharged her firstborn son at night and for treating a gunshot wound patient as a minor injury patient, an incident that has left Alice with many questions than answers.
Walimdischarge usiku kwa nini? Wakaniambia kulikuwa na watu wengi sana, so hawakuweza kucontrol watu wasitoke ama wasiende wapi, mbora walimudischarge juu yeye alikuwa na minor injuries juu. Lakini sasa kama hawakumuuliza hata anaishi wapi juu, ama wamudetain tu huko asubuhi ifike ndio wamrelease. Sasa hiyo ni kitu iliniudhi sana.
The shattered mother of four now reveals that the family has visited all public hospitals, including the Kenyatta National Hospital and Bagathi Hospital. After missing her son at the hospitals, she extended the search for her son at the city mortuary, and all was in vain.
Kaenda hospitali, hatukumpata. Hospitali nyingi sana, Bagathi Hospital, Kenyatta Hospital. Mimi nilifikiria maybe yako kwa mortuary, na ndio hiyo niliamka kwenda kwa mortuary kumwangalia. Na ndio hiyo sikumpata. Oh my God.
The family is now calling upon the government and President William Ruto to intervene and help them solve the riddle of their son's disappearance, as her effort to seek help from the police appear to be futile.
Serikali wanisaidie kujua kwenye mtoto wangu wako, juu nasikia uchungu sana.
Samira Mohammed for TV47.
Now, the government is under pressure to rectify its mishandled expenditures. This follows, of course, the Public Financial Management Performance Monitoring System, that is PFM, and follow all the rules governing the procurement and use of borrowed monies. The Law Society of Kenya, that is the LSK, says that this will harness Kenya's public debt situation and rising levels of corruption. As Mike Kagwongo reports, the stakeholders at the Debt and Anti-Corruption Citizen Assembly on Thursday said that one of the major obstacles to Kenya's potential as a nation is the country's spiraling public debt caused by rampant corruption and embezzlement of public funds.
Many suggested tax raises and additional shillings that common mwananchi would owe their government set off the immediate spark for the violent protest that engulfs Kenya's capital for 2 months. However, the fundamental reason was the billions of shillings that the Kenyan government owes its creditors. Since then, the discussion has sparked a national conversation on how the country will be able to pay off its more than 10 trillion shillings in debt, especially after the controversial withdrawal of the 2024 finance bill. The Law Society of Kenya now says Kenya's potential is still seriously hampered by the spiral in public debt, which is caused by rampant corruption and public money theft. LSK President Faith Odhiambo saying that it is time for a conversation to be held on how the people may actively contribute to the solution.
We must ensure that our public finance management systems are not just theoretically sound, but practically effective. We must push for transparency in all financial dealings and demand that those who mismanage or misuse public funds are held accountable.
Kenya is confronted with several obstacles, such as the crisis related to the rising cost of living, the effects of climate change, increasing debt vulnerability, and high rates of poverty and inequality. Kenya is not deficient in legal frameworks for managing public debt, as during Thursday's Debt and Anti-Corruption Citizens Assembly, stakeholders stated that Kenya's growth and capacity to convert its debt into real investment that may yield income to pay it back are both threatened by the mishandling of this resource.
As we discuss this debt question, we are not talking about the debt bonds that we have taken, the first bond issue. How much did we take? Where is the contract? Have we been able to see it?
So the problem is at the budget process, but not at the how to raise the revenue to fund that budget.
The government is now facing pressure to correct its managed spending, adhere to the Public Financial Management PFM performance monitoring system, and obey all laws pertaining to the acquisition and usage of borrowed funds. Mike Kagwongo, TV47, Nairobi.
Now, the government is devolving the green financing to counties for better fund management. This is after it emerged that almost 5% of Kenya's gross domestic product was channeled to mitigating the after effects of floods and drought. Treasury and Economic Planning CS Moses Mbadi now says that the government is looking to secure more funds for disaster prevention from the $100 billion commitment made by the Global North on balancing out carbon credits for climate justice. Our reporter Hibak Saeed with more on this report.
Kenya remains the main beneficiary of climate funds from the Global North, securing almost a third of all monies channeled to the continent by March this year. According to data collected by the European House Ambrosati, Kenya attracted around $7 billion in capital flows for green-centric projects, amassing 28% of such funds coming into the continent, which translates to trillions of Kenyan shillings.
To enhance our access to climate finance. This is something that we cannot do individually as nations. We must come together as a continent and insist in enhancing climate change financing. If anything, we are not the polluters of the environment. We know where the polluters reside.
This, however, barely registered for many who suffered during the recent floods, with the government now confirming that at least 5% of the country's GDP had to be channeled to mitigate the effects of floods and drought.
Climate Action Plan, FLOCA, and in particular has successfully mobilized financing at both the community level through our county governments.
Proposing that Africa's requirement
to deliver on the goal of new collective quantified goal that you require at Baku is up to $1.3 trillion.
No matter, government focus has now been cast to the billions of dollars promised by first world emitters to achieve climate justice, with CS Mbadi saying the acquisition remains flawed and frustrating.
I strongly believe that AFDAN is a game changer. AFDAN, therefore, has a critical role in supporting the African Union Commission in its commitment to climate action.
All this as former Prime Minister Raila Odinga hit the ground running on his aspiration for the AUC seat, stating his interest in finally tipping the climate action scale in favor of Africa through a joint appeal for the same. Hibak Said for TV47.
And on that note, we want to take a short break. When we come back, we will have this all-important conversation on whether you and I are actually aware and have the knowledge on the civics of this country, the rules and duties and roles of not just you and I as citizens, but also our leaders, and what this means for us, and more importantly, what the recent changes in our country mean in this field. Take a seat. We'll be right back.
Hey there friends, welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter. Join them. Hey there friends, welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Good evening. If you're joining us right now, this is the Daily Report and it's time for Insight Tonight. And to set us off on this very, very interesting and important conversation, I'd like to introduce a piece by Stanley Nyaringita. Now, they say that they're not the future generation, but the now generation. But the now generation, of course, armed with their phones and their voices, the young people have been able to shake the tectonic plates of politics and governance. This is what experts call a new phenomenon. But here is Stanley Nyaringita, and he unpacks for us the rise of civic awareness in the now generations, from clicks to progress. Take a look.
As temperatures continue to rise along Nairobi's busy streets, so does the conversation on this football field.
Story experience umesikia venye Chia anasema,
especially article 55. Ukisoma vizuri itakueleza kwamba kijana ni yule mtu ambaye inafaa akuwe educated na akuwe trained na government.
Person pale ndio anze kuiba ni ngumu, sababu ana hiyo experience.
In such informal barazas, these two gentlemen, former MCA candidate in Kakamega, Kevin Sifuna, and his compatriot, former Nairobi senatorial hopeful, Justin Misoka, educate the young people on their roles and rights as citizens. They also inform the public on the law-making process.
Wazee ndio ambao, wale wazee ambao wana haki ya kuwa wakae nje, vijana tufanye kazi. Sisi vijana ndio tunakuwa sasa hatuna kazi, tunahangaika tu.
According to IEBC, there are 22.1 million registered voters in the 2022 elections. Young people aged between 18 to 34 who had registered as voters were at least 9 million. However, on election day of 2022, a much smaller number showed up to exercise their civic duty.
Civic education it is. Civic education,
2 years later, some of the young people who won't typically toss themselves in the murky waters of politics and governance are very quickly redefining the landscape with social media as their playing field. The hashtag Reject Finance Bill 2024 movement, which saw President William Ruto do away with the contentious bill, gained so much popularity globally.
Stop killing us! Stop killing us!
The build-up to the street demos saw young Kenyans on different social media platforms record short clips educating others on various sections of the bill, which they termed as punitive, while some translated the bill into bite-sized chunks and in their native languages.
I'm Marvin Mabonga. I come from Kimilili constituency.
On the 5th of July this year, President William Ruto made true his promise to host an X-Space to engage with the Gen Z. Over 900,000 listeners tuned in despite the frequent hitches that finally saw influencer Osama Otero hosting it.
Listening to the feedback today on X, I think I have gone home with, I need to listen more. I need more empathy.
The tech community coming together and looking for new ways to disseminate information. The doctors coming together and forming an association wakituambia, kama kuna protest kesho, we'll have our booth in a certain point so that when you're injured, you're going to be treated for free. Seeing even the PR, communications, influencers, and all that family coming together and assisting in whatever way they can.
And so there is so much free flow of information. We need to hop on that train. We need to know, what does the Constitution say about this? What are my rights? What are my privileges? What are my responsibilities?
The focal point of the effort by the protesters has so far morphed into a fact-finding mission of what the ruling government has undertaken, with the young people creating platforms accessible to the public.
Because there is not enough water for the residents in Eldoret. And this one was supposed to provide 23 million liters per day.
Previously, we have had some semi-officials and NGOs and people like that saying they are doing civic education, and they're usually targeted in small places. But here we have mass mobilization by the youth themselves involved, which is a new phenomenon in itself.
Young people in Africa are expected to make 42% of the global youth population by 2030. So with this kind of a youth bulge, how critical is civic awareness, particularly in Kenya, in the coming years?
Many of them do not have IDs, and so they need to press to get the IDs there, because you cannot register unless you have a what? An ID, and that's a major drawback. For those who have IDs, then ensure that they register. So you have two levels of operation. Ensure that every 18-year-old has a valid ID. And then ensure that every 18-year-old who has a valid ID register to vote. And then ensure that on the voting day, they turn out to vote. That's those 3 steps. So if the spirit they appear to have continues, then they will have a big impact on who becomes president.
Recent data by the National Population Policy for Sustainable Development and PPSD shows that the number of youth between ages 15 and 34 is expected to reach 22.3 million in 2030.
Ya kuboresha uongozi wa taifa.
Stanley Nyaringita, TV47.
Alafu na track record ya mtu.
All right, thank you, Stanley. And on that note, we would like to begin our conversation tonight. And to help us understand this a little better and to share some insight is a gentleman from an organization called Uraia. Your name is John.
Yes.
John Kamande. Karibu sana.
Asante.
Welcome to TV47.
Thank you, and thank you very much for having me here.
The pleasure is ours. Now, you just saw that piece that was airing a few moments ago. What stood out for you?
Yeah, I think we are living in a very interesting time. We are seeing an awakening from the young people in Kenya who have come out and taken lead in disseminating knowledge and awareness creation to the citizen and the masses. And we saw this, of course, epitomized by the recent turnout during the Reject Finance Bill protest. And Victor, I must say that incident, or that moment that we saw the change and the awakening in Kenya did not happen overnight. It is a sum total and a product of so many years of investment on civic education by various partners. And the beauty about it is that we are having a generation that is taking up the role, actually coming and disputing what has been believed before, that young people are not involved. They are taking lead. I've seen some artists there who are my good friends, like Silways, Willie Oeba. I've seen a number of, even Mike Mushiri, an influencer, who took lead in translating the finance bill, into various languages to make sure that other people could understand. So I think it's quite an opportune time to celebrate the efforts of young people and the many other people who took part over time in the recent history to emphasize and to put to light the need for a civic awareness on matters to do with, of course, public finance management, which is one of the issues that was very prominent on that.
Right. Now, on the matter of turnout, during the finance bill protests, anti-finance bill protests, we saw a massive turnout of young people, not just in the capital, Nairobi, but across the country. So many youth came out to express themselves. But just a couple of years before, in the general election of 2022, the turnout question was something entirely different. I think the figures that we have show us that at that time, about 8 million, just at the end of 2021, just when when they were taking that cycle, the 18 to 24-year-olds, the people who are joining the population of eligible voters, was about 8 million people. 8 million people were eligible to vote, which is the largest youth electorate in Kenyan history at that time. We think 2027 is going to be a whole lot more different, which represents about 28% of the total electorate. But the actual turnout in May, actually, forget even the election, just the registration of the votes, the people that came out to register in May, just a few months later, when IEBC ended that, was just 2.3 million. 8 million eligible, only 2.3 million show up to actually take the voting cards. And an even smaller percentage of those 2.3 million showed up on voting day to actually vote. So talk to me about this issue of turnout. What was the issue then? Let's go back in time. What was the issue back then that led to these low numbers, these low manifestation of potential?
Yeah, I think very, very spot on to trace back the history. And what you've just mentioned about IBC anticipated to register around 6 million. They ended up registering a dismal 2.3. And this is a culmination of so many years where we are seeing a lot of hesitation and disenfranchisement of young people in matters, elections and overall democratic processes. That's something that we noted. And I think...
But why? Would you care to tell us why as you proceed?
Well, this is compounded. It's compounded with many issues. One of them, of course, young people for a long time did not believe or did not have confidence in the electoral process in Kenya. Number two, we have a lot of issues with our elections in terms of the delivered promises, the promises made and what is being delivered. And we saw a lot of people shying away from taking up these positions. But when you journey through time and look at the statistics, especially in the recent month, which you have just mentioned, we are seeing again a change and an increase, which is a very encouraging trend. And of course, this can be attributed to so many other issues. You remember very well, apart from the finance bill this year in 2024, last year's finance bill was also contentious, but we did not see the same kind of reaction. Of course, there were jitters here and there, but we did not see the kind of response, the kind of organization and dissent that came out this year, and which tells you that as much as we are seeing people being disenfranchised, people are listening, and civic education is actually working. And that's why, ultimately, because I think one of the things I really want to give it to those who organized the awareness around finance bill. A lot of my colleagues, of course, have been doing this. For your information, Victor, a finance bill is a document that has been there ever since even the promulgation of the Constitution and the start of the evolution, for instance, in 2010 and 2013.
There have been finance bills.
There have been finance bills, but it's only the last 2 years.
The last 2 years.
The last 2 years is where we are seeing. Why do you think so? It's because this time round, we had a tactical approach, and I think we can give it all to all the organizers and the people who are trying to create awareness around this issue, because they were able to put it on an issue-based perspective. People could relate it. I remember some of the contentious bills that were being fronted there. For instance, last year there was housing levy. This year there was issues to do, of course, with even digital content creation and levies on taxes on people who are making money online. And so when these people, and I think all the stakeholders and the ecosystem of civic educators were able to contextualize and put this information in a way that resonates, in a way that touches or relates to the issues of young people, it's when this awakening was spurred.
But do you think this was the missing link before? Because, I mean, there's been thousands of people whose job it is to actually do civic education, out of passion, out of employment, or out of necessity. But do you think this bit, where making this relatable, was this the missing link?
Well, not exactly. But of course, to some extent, I think we could have done better before. Because ideally, of course, apart from it being relatable, there's also a component of we're living in a very, young people are digital natives. We are living in a highly informative context. Yeah. So information, of course, these are relatability together with the platforms that were able to avail this information, the increased use and the penetration of the internet, social media platforms, and the kind of organizing that happens around those spaces is also what brought together some of these issues. I can tell you for sure that, yes, we have been doing tailored civic education ourselves as Uraia Trust, together with our partners across the country. We have been developing content that is relatable. We have been doing youth responsive, child friendly. But this only came to light this year when we had an upscale of this kind of approach. So to some extent, it might not necessarily mean that was the only missing link, because it's an amalgamation of so many other factors that happened in between.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think what I can contextualize, and I think moving forward, we are seeing the digital space as a very, very active organizing space for civic education.
All right.
And it's changing the game.
It's changing the game.
Yeah.
And I would like to come back to that. My producers, I'd like you to please put the WhatsApp number on the screens so that our dear viewers can send in the feedback and questions, and I'd be happy to sample them live. But here's another bit that was interesting to me. I looked at some numbers from 2022 because sometimes one of the focal points of civic education efforts is really the election cycle. So in the last election cycle that ended 2022, in the run-up to that election, some research actually said that only about half of the respondents of was to become new voters, only about half, let's say about 48 to 50%, only about half of them were confident that they understood the electoral process. I mean, we're talking about huge numbers, completely ignorant or maybe less than well informed about something as simple as the electoral processes. And we know what happens sometimes when you don't understand something properly, you're either not going to do it or you're liable to be used or misused by those who have a little bit more knowledge than you. Talk to us about how this is likely to change, especially with the tools that are available now, but also with the growing awareness that has been witnessed in the last 2 months.
Yeah. Thank you, Victor. And I'm really loving the fact that you did quite some research in terms of contextualizing some of this, because numbers don't lie. And the thing is, when you look at the history of civic education in Kenya, you'll notice that we have had a lot of discrepancy in terms of availing resources for civic education and voter education for that matter. First of all, principally, it's the duty of government to provide civic education. But
hold on. This is something we all need, folks at home, get this. It is your government's job to educate you or to provide civic education.
Yes, very clear. Both national government and county governments, in fact, even county governments have a bigger mandate. Section 10 of the County Government Act of 2012 mandates that every county government in this country, the 47 of them, should establish departments and focal points for civic education and public parties to facilitate that kind of process. And we are seeing, it will surprise you, half the counties do not have a functional department.
All right. In fact, on that point, John, just before you proceed, I know you have more to answer. You haven't quite had time to answer the question. Please put a pin on it. I want to throw a poll to the people at home. John has just alerted us to a fact, all right? Something that you and I should be experiencing. I want you to send the message to the tablet right here. My producers, please put the WhatsApp number on the screen. And I want the people at home to tell me, have you actually felt the impact of your county government, your local government, wherever you come from, when it comes to civic education on any matter whatsoever? Let me know. Let me know if you've had any impact or you felt it and what it was, and I'll be happy to sample that. Please continue.
Great.
You were telling us about how things are likely to be different this time round.
Yes.
Tell us why.
Yeah, so when we're seeing government not taking that responsibility, and we're really lucky that we have...
So funding is an issue.
Funding is an issue. Funding is an issue for civic education. Take, for example, one of the mandates of IEBC, because we in the election context, was to provide voter education. And I can tell you for sure, and I think if colleagues in the sector will agree with me, that as much as it's one of the very critical mandates for IEBC to conduct voter education throughout the electoral cycle, not only towards the election, they only had funds to do this a few months, probably less than 6 months towards the election. Again, at the same time, there are a lot of operational activities happening at the IBC in terms of organizing for the general poll.
And the trainings.
And what have you.
Procurement.
Yes. So it is very limited. Then it becomes very limited for them to penetrate other spaces. And that's why we're seeing so many actors who have come to salvage the situation. But honestly speaking, this is a duty that government needs to take seriously. We need to see the same allocations. And we're seeing crazy spends by county governments. I don't want to mention, but you had the Auditor General report citing some very crazy expenditures. And one of the principal...
Millions on flowers.
Millions on flowers. On a crate of soda.
A crate of soda, millions.
Yeah. But departments, critical departments like the civic education and public participation, not only even have been institutionalized or have been put in place, but they don't even receive funding. They don't receive commensurate in terms of personnel, training, and facilitation for them to do this kind of work. So one of the challenges we had, and I think this is another situation, and I remember when you gave the analogy when we started this bulletin, you mentioned about 2.5 years to the elections. Right now, as we speak, the IBC is supposed to be functional, conducting ongoing voter registration, but that has not started. It's only 2 years to the elections. The government is fully aware of this, of course. Yeah? I mean, it's in public domain.
In fact, on that point, do you think, one would argue that it's almost deliberate, the lack of funding to these very critical organizations and this very critical service, civic education? Would you say it's deliberate and it serves a purpose to keep a vast majority of Kenyans ignorant?
Yeah, it's quite systemic. I think to a larger extent, it's deliberate. It's to frustrate some of these things, and not to mention that even recently we had a ruling. Take for instance one constituency in northern Kenya, that is Banisa, who unfortunately we lost.
They lost the member of parliament through a road accident.
Yeah, until today, the people of Banisa,
no by-election,
no representation,
no leadership.
Yeah. The reason why? It's because IBC is not properly constituted in terms of the commissioners. So some of these issues, when you look at them, it dates back to the commitment we're having from our government.
But John, you're saying things are different. You're saying now there's a new sheriff in town. There's a new factor that is, changing the way the game is played. And you're saying it's technology, it's young people, it's the internet, and all the knowledge and wisdom associated with it. You're saying this is a game changer. Yeah, we are seeing, at least we are seeing a silver lining ahead. And I think what was evident recently from, of course, the Gen Z protests and the recent organizing and the civic awareness by not only Gen Zs, but the entire country, we are seeing another crop of advocacy towards affirming or trying to emphasize the need for us to be able to sustain civic education throughout the entire cycle. And I think the other thing I think we need to mention, and I want to acknowledge, I know there's a bill in Parliament sponsored by Senator Esi Okenyuri, Mheshimiwa, on civic education, which of course will try to bring to light and try to even put more structured kind of engagement in terms of civic education. So part of that is something to do with the efforts that have been there before. And I think why I'm saying that there's some light ahead at the end of the tunnel is because we saw government actually responding to the issues that the Gen Zs brought forward. And one of them was very common and very, very open. Please adhere to the Constitution. If the Constitution says we need to have civic education budgeted for, resourced and undertaken across the country, this is something that needs to be put to light. And I'll tell you, I'm expecting and I remain very hopeful that the coming elections are going to be a defining moment for us, because these people have become more aware and they're becoming more alert. There are things that government can't do anymore. They need to be serious, they need to be tactical, they need to be deliberate in terms of their actions moving forward, in terms of organizing. Because we are dealing with a generation that is quite enlightened. Generation that will wake up today and just tweet, "We the people," Article 1, or the preamble of the Constitution, and it will trend. And I can tell you, even the mother in the village will know, "We the people." All right.
That power is something that is really exceptional and
never been seen before.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, John, and talk to us, because see, you and your team at Uraia are actually trained to be able to disseminate this information. They say with great power comes great responsibility. Sure. I mean, the internet gives us great power in terms of reach, in terms of access to information. But how do we make sure this information is used properly so we don't get cases of misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, people using what looks like a legit bit of news or bit of information, twisting it to be able to confuse others. You know, they say in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
Sure.
Those people who masquerade as the one-eyed people, the ones who have some insight into what's going on, how do we protect this?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that, of course, part of our work, and I think we need, I acknowledge the challenge that we are living in a very digital active and a space where information could easily be distorted. And I think one of the ways that we are trying to address this gap is to ensure that we provide, number one, factual and timely information out there. And then, of course, approaching civic education with the lenses of ensuring that it's relatable and more practical. Yeah,
like the Gen Zs did.
Like the Gen Zs did, because the Gen Zs were organizing around one document. I can tell you there are so many public finance or budget documents that are actually worked on until we reach the section where we need to work on the finance bill for it to become an act. In fact, it's one of the last documents. So if we can organize around the cycle, we can probably be actively engaged in every step, and not only knowing, but relating with it. I remember the live stream of the voting of the finance bill at Parliament. Everybody was glued to their screens. Everybody was listening. My MP, did he say yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah. So
you can greet them.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting perspective. But one way to actually counter misinformation and disinformation is to make it relatable. Let people know the decision at hand. Let people know the implication. I'm sure the finance bill, everybody was speaking about it because we had a very, very thorough analysis and a lot of focus on it. So it makes it more objective. And of course, we also need to empower more people, more young people. We need to have more civic educators on the ground, providing this information on a regular basis, every day, so that we're able to ensure that what is out there in terms of awareness creation is something that is factual, it's objective, and people can relate to their daily lives.
All right. Now, John, just before, clearly, obviously, this conversation is, we did say the efforts at civic education are bigger. Well, the challenge of civic education is bigger than the efforts. I also dare say that the conversation on civic education is bigger than the time that we have.
Sure.
But I can see some feedback here from some people. Allow me to go through it.
Sure.
Machakos County is doing more public participation than the groundwork. Nothing at all is ever considered. They implement what they think is fit for what they want. That's one person. Another person called Basil Okech. Do you know anyone called that?
Yes,
Basil
yes,
Okech.
yes.
Basil Okech says, John Kamande is spot on the face of civic education. Indeed, it has changed. Somebody else says, John has his facts on point. Somebody else says, what's next for civic education? How will we tap into the young people? And I believe you answered some of that, and you can tell us that in your parting shot. What is next for civic education? Another thing is somebody says, the civic education, I say yes, by using Gen Z. Somebody else asked John if he has interacted with Gen Zs and what are his thoughts about their ideology. You can also wrap that up in your parting shot. And somebody else says, civic education is not a priority for politicians. For them, it's never about the people. Civic education is about the people. I believe something about the responsibility of this. And finally, last but not least, our good people at home. She says, hi, my name is Juliet and John is my boss in Nairobi. John. Good to see you. I will respond to the question in this way. We have not been well received by many citizens in the past who ask us to pay them in order to engage with them. Having said that, we have made a difference in how Nairobians engage with the governance processes and are looking forward to more Kenyans inviting us to enlighten them more. This is from Uraia. Now, John, this is your camera right here. You've had the two questions that people have asked you.
Yeah.
And I know you have something to say as a parting shot.
Okay.
I want to give you an opportunity in a minute to speak to the people of Kenya. This is a conversation that is ongoing. But if you had one thing to say to the people of Kenya, what would you say? Straight away, that's your camera.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's an interesting time to live in Kenyans because, number one, we do not have any inadequacies in terms of laws and policies in this country. We have enough. We have a constitution that speaks so boldly about our duty and its power. We've seen it stand the test of time. We are celebrating 14 years since the promulgation, I think on Tuesday next week. And it's something that we really need to agree. And I've had a few comments from what I've just been shared. People saying, for example, what is happening in Machakos, that the public is being involved in public participation. We're not seeing the real work in the ground. I think one thing we should be very, very positive about is that we have a constitution that was able to put forward the devolved system of governance that brings power closer to the people. And it's a very, very positive point. What we need to shift our focus on is not only participating, but meaningfully engaging in these processes. And I believe that when we saw this uprising and we saw this awakening led by the Gen Zs, and I keep mentioning it, it was not an event that happened overnight. This is an investment for years. This is an investment that started way back. I was speaking with a gentleman who is one of our civic educators in Kiambu. His name is Joseph Kamonye. He started civic education in 1963 during the Muyakane time. They were printing leaflets, trying to share and advise the masses on what needs to happen. And I can tell you the investments, and he's so proud, and I had a chat with him very recently about what has been happening in this country, is that the little effort that started long time ago are finally bearing fruit. So we don't need to lower our guard as citizens. We need to engage more actively. We need to utilize our personal spaces, beginning with your dining table. Some of you are taking dinner right now. That's the most powerful space to start with to change this country. And I think that's the way to go.
All right, thank you so much, John. You're saying the struggle continues.
Yes.
A luta continua.
A luta continua.
All right. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen at home, thank you so much. Somebody here is saying, love the show on civic education. Somebody else says, for the longest time, CSOs have done civic education to the youth. It's time we are seeing the fruits with the Gen Z revolution. Good job, John and the Uraia Trust. And of course, finally, excellent stuff from John. Our country seriously needs civic education. People of Kenya, like we said, this conversation is bigger than the time that we have. But we want to thank you for choosing us to inform you this evening. And we want to thank you for participating in sending in your feedback. John said, keep the conversation going, keep the ball rolling. And of course, the matter of the ball is going to be center stage as a VAR, your weekly supercharged sporting show, kicks off right after we exit the studio. This has been John Kamande from Uraia Trust. Thank you so much. You can find them online. They have a lot of information and programs. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. My name, good people, is Victor Muyakane, and I bid you good night. Up next, VAR. Good night. Thank you very much. That was great.